My name is Cody Garrett. I'm a certified financial planner, but my unexpected hobby is professional music arranging.
Welcome to Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors, the podcast where we interview fellow financial advisors about their pursuits and pastimes beyond their professional persona, some of which may be surprising to their colleagues and clients. We're interested in what makes them tick and how their unexpected hobbies might or might not relate to their everyday lives. Here's our discussion with this week's guest. Welcome to the Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors podcast. I'm Brian Wright with Fiduciary CFO, alongside my co-host and fellow financial advisor, Joshua Walker.
Greetings, everybody.
Greetings indeed. Joining us today is Cody Garrett with his unexpected hobby of professional music arranging. Welcome, Cody.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. It's been fun to see your history. I think I'm still new on the podcast, right? Like you're about 10 episodes in or so. It's really exciting to see. Maybe I can look back a few years from now and go, I was at the top. I was in the first 20 when you have, hundreds and hundreds at that point.
Well, and we've talked about that as like, once we reach Joe Rogan status, these first 10,
hits,
these
right?
first 10 are like, these are the OGs of the podcast. Like you guys took you took a blind leap of faith with these couple knuckleheads with an idea, and you're like, yeah, we'll go on there. So thank you very much for being on the show.
I hadn't thought of us as having a history yet, but I suppose technically.
Well, what you can do, talking about music is you can just say like our first album is our greatest hits, right?
Right, exactly.
Speaking of which, how did you get? Most musicians started early. Was that the case for you? That your parents plunked you in front of the piano at the age of 2.5 and hoped for greatness?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I was plunked by my grandmother. It's funny. My sister was plugged first. She was signed up for piano lessons. My grandma played piano, and she's like, I want to make sure that the kids learn music. That's really important. So she signed my sister up for lessons. Once my sister started playing like the chopsticks, I was like, anything you can do, I can do better, right? A sibling, type of situation. So I ended up as she was taking lessons, I was trying to learn alongside and even like faster than her. So my grandma was like, okay, we'll plunk you into lessons too. And then it became kind of like, again, at least in my mind, it was like kind of competitive in the beginning. But then she actually ended up stopping music, and I started at age 6, and I continued through the following decades. So yeah, when I started music, it was really just so that I could also play the piano like my sister could.
And how long did it take you to branch out beyond the ivories into, or did you ever? Are you a committed keyboardist and nothing else, or multi-musical?
Yeah, I think there's actually a really great idea here. This idea of like, when did you go from being a pianist to being a keyboardist? Right? Some people are like, well, what's the difference, right? So some people might think, oh, like keyboard is like, that's electronic, right? Like you plug it into the wall, whereas a keyboard, is like manual, mechanical, like, hundreds, thousands of years old, going back to harpsichords and things. But I always say, if you're sitting down, you're a pianist, and if you're standing up, you're a keyboardist. So I went from sitting down from like age 6 to age around probably all the way until like 18 or so. And then I became a keyboardist. I graduated, became a keyboardist at age 18, and remained a keyboardist, through the, current day.
And when people level up to standing keyboarding, they have the opportunity to do a lot more motion with their torso. Are you a dancer as well as a keyboarder, or do you
I think
maintain
every
good posture?
musician has. It's funny. I think every musician, it's less about their movement than like their face. Like how like every face, like if you ever watched like John Mayer play guitar, like his face like distorts, right? He looks like he's straight out of like Men in Black, like as an alien or something. But yeah, I get like a very focused, like I kind of get like a kind of a grunge face on my face, like a grunge face when I play music. So I have a very focused face, but my body doesn't really have a lot of movement. Of course, one thing that's nice about standing up is that you can, again, like in terms of just, as we know, right, a lot of us have standing desks now, right? Like we understand like there's some benefit to like being able to kind of just move your body a little bit. But the biggest thing from moving from a pianist to a keyboardist is the type of music you play. Like you don't often see somebody playing like, like Bach or Beethoven,
Chopin,
like sonata, right? Like at a stand-up keyboard, unless they're at like a kind of a really awkward country club banquet or something. But for me, it's funny that, so your shirt, Joshua, you have these are difficult times. If you don't know, if you can't see on the, audio version, like those are time signatures, right? And one of my biggest transitions from piano to keyboard was I was obsessed with Dream Theater, which is a
Ooh.
progressive rock band that's known for like almost every measure of their music, like switches from like 4/4 to 7/8 to 15/16. Like there's multiple changes in time signature. So yeah, I think the biggest transition is not just going from sitting down to standing up, but moving from all the music from Gregorian chant all the way to Gershwin, right? And then Gershwin and after is really what like the keyboardists are focused on, which is modern music that we hear on the radio. Those are all there are very few pianists on the radio, right? There's mostly keyboardists playing on those records. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and we'll talk a little bit about that transition. I started classically, but then I moved as quickly as I could into contemporary, starting with video game music and Dream Theater and some of the other music that you don't imagine somebody having a big long wig when you listen to the music.
I imagine I speak for a certain segment of Americans, and this will probably not make Gershwin aficionados happy, but when I hear Gershwin, I immediately think O'Hare Airport, United Airlines, and I know Gershwin is bigger than that, but
Rhapsody
that's
in
the
Blue.
association.
That's all
Yeah,
I
Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So then 18, I'm thinking you left home, you went off to college, you joined a band.
right.
Is my stereotype confirmed?
That would have been funny. So yeah, a lot of people ask me like, why did you decide to go like from just playing music like with your music teacher, right, that you were plugged into, and now like thinking about it professionally or in terms of your academic. So I got to the end of high school, and it's funny now I think about people are chasing after their career or their degree focused on like, how do you want to help, like how do you want to serve people, like what do you want to do? And I just asked myself, what am I good at, right? So like literally the only answer to that question as like getting my senior year of high school is like, I'm pretty good at playing piano, so I guess I'll just get a degree in that. But going in to get my degree in professional music, like I actually didn't have any thought about what I was going to do with that degree. It was just like, I'm good at this. Let's keep getting good at the thing I'm already good at. And maybe someday like there'll be like an opportunity to actually make money doing that. So yeah, I actually, when I signed up for, when I graduated from high school, I went to University of Houston which is about 30 minutes from my house, back in 2006, which we all know, like 2006, going to 2008 and 9, like a lot was happening in terms of stock market stuff and all this. I had no idea what was going on. I was living on campus. I was actually getting a degree in music theory, which is kind of like the science of music. So I consider myself a left brain creative, which means I work in a creative space, but I'm very logical and data oriented.
Sure.
So, I mean, we'll talk about too, like that transition from music to money, like actually wasn't that difficult because I already went into my music, academics and career very much from like a scientific approach, not necessarily an artistic approach.
And you went in music theory, and did you end up changing your major, drifting around, or did you go 4 years, graduate with the same declared major?
Right. It's funny. I did 3 years of music theory at University of Houston, and then I got kind of like that. I got over like the academic part. Like I got over like the just black and white academic, like just kind of, it felt boring after a while. I was like, I kind of know this stuff, like what's next. So again, classical music kind of like they stop teaching you once you get to Gershwin and your music history. And I was like, well, what about the music that's like actually, a lot more relevant in terms of like careers now, besides being like a concert musician, concert pianist. So I actually ended up transitioning. I went from the University of Houston studying classical music theory. I went up to Boston and started studying contemporary piano performance and arranging. I guess they should have called it keyboard performance and arranging at Berklee College of Music, which is known really for, it's kind of like the Harvard of contemporary music.
I was just there. I was there last weekend.
Oh, awesome.
Great spot there.
It's a beautiful place. Yeah.
And Brian, tell us while you were there, this is your chance to brag.
Oh yeah. So my daughter plays French horn, and she was in a 2-week program at the New England Conservatory.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's an awesome place to learn.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it was cool. It was our first trip to Boston. We're big fans.
Yeah, that's
Brian has been talking about Boston all week and what a wonderful place it was to visit. Did you end up living there more than a year, or did you one and done?
Yeah, I lived there for a year, and something kind of, again, I'm not that interesting in terms of living in Boston, but I actually lived, so like, that there was the marathon bombing, right? Like kind of early, like 2010, 2012, maybe around that time.
Yeah.
But there was that marathon bombing, like right out of the finish line. I was actually standing in that exact place the year before.
Whoa.
So like the Boston bombing, I was like, that was literally a block from where I lived the year before when I went to Berklee. So yeah, I was only there for a year. I took out a nice big student loan for the 1 year I was there from Wells Fargo, right? The evil private loan. But yeah, I was only there for 1 year, thankfully. And what's nice about having the 3 years at University of Houston, I was actually able to test into my senior year. I was able to test out of all the fundamentals, so that at Berkeley I took it was amazing. I took like advanced, reharmonization techniques. Again, if you're, a musician, you're a nerd here. I studied like big band arranging with somebody who's like, was like the big band arranger at Berkeley. I studied gospel, like gospel music. I studied advanced rhythmic techniques. Speaking of your difficult times, Joshua. So it was really cool. I literally just got to sign. Imagine if you go into college and like they have to skip the fundamentals and just say, I get to sign up for any class at the university. Like that was practically what I did. I think I took like 15 classes or something, because at Berkeley, what's nice is you pay the same price regardless of how many credits there are. So I was like, if I'm going to get out this big student loan and take 1 year at this college, like I'm going to knock out like all the most advanced, interesting classes I can. And yeah, so some of those classes I even studied, I studied Latin percussion, right? So like I studied like how to play, like congas and, timbales and all the like the cool instruments on the percussion side too.
Because
So
why
like I
not?
got
It's
a
like an
very
educational
well-rounded.
buffet. All you can eat.
Yeah, it was all you could eat for $50,000, right? And then you're just like, okay, I'm gonna go back for seconds. And I found that like the most interesting things to me, there are like 2 classes at Berkeley that probably made my whole career, which is like reharmonization techniques. Effectively, what I can do, again, I don't have my keyboard like right in front of me. I wish I should have plugged that up today, but I can listen to it. I can listen to any song and tell you what the chords are. I couldn't do that before I went to Berkeley. So like I can take any song and rearrange it for like a full orchestra. So those are 2 like skills that I learned at Berkeley that I didn't get at the university.
Do you have perfect pitch?
I do not. I have what's called relative pitch, which is,
as do I,
hey,
yeah.
like, yeah, exactly. Like, tell me the tonic, like, tell me the 1 chord, right? Or tell me, what key this is in, and then I can tell you all the other notes.
My daughter has
effectively.
perfect pitch, and I'm like,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
proud. I'm so jealous. Like I shouldn't be. I should just be like, oh, isn't that cool? It's like, I'm like,
Yeah.
was one musician to another. It's like I'm just jealous. She's like, it's kind of a curse though.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the curse about perfect pitch is that when you're like walking through the lobby, right, of your, like school or something, you can hear that the vending machine is like at A flat, but it's like 3 cents flat, and it drives you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes having perfect pitch can be a curse. Also, if you're reading music in one key, but you're told to play it in a different key, that's very difficult if you have perfect pitch, because what you're playing and what you're seeing aren't lining up. So that can be kind of difficult moving forward.
Oh, okay. I guess I just translate everything into numbers in my head, and then I just
Right, yeah. If you're a
1,
numbers
4,
guy,
5,
like
6,
that's-
3,
yeah,
and
the Nashville numbers definitely help when you have perfect pitch.
okay. So then you spent your year at Berkeley, and were you able to parlay that wealth of education into a career, or was it a rough time in our country to get a job doing anything? Because it was
Yeah, it's funny. I had no idea what was going on. Like I didn't even know that there was a stock market thing going on. So yeah, 2008, 2009, kind of looking back, it was kind of ironic that one of my friends, his dad was flipping houses, which you did, when the real estate market crashed.
once upon a
But
time.
I had no idea why. I was just like, oh, like I'll help. That's cool. Like I'll help your dad flip houses. But yeah, musically, I started my career playing mostly like private stuff. Like I played like weddings. I played more funerals and weddings, which is kind of weird. But I had a 10-year career in music. I made about $75,000 a year, in like the later parts of my career. So as a professional musician, that's actually pretty good, by the way. If you're making 75,000, like
Not
just
to
playing
brag.
music and not teaching. Yeah. So I had a 10-year career in music, and then literally overnight, Wednesday night I was a musician. Thursday morning, I became a financial planner. So a lot in between there.
And what drove that transition? I mean, I'm assuming you didn't hang up your keyboard for good, but what made you stop doing it professionally?
Yeah, it came down to getting married and realizing, the big story here is actually, it's one of the cool memories of music is I was a music director at a church working full time. Like I had a 40-hour week. By the way, if you live in Texas, like if you're a musician, you have a church gig because that's the only consistent bread you're going to be able to have, make moving forward. But I worked as a professional musician at a church, so 40 hours a week, had access to a 403B, but I didn't know what that meant. Right? They said sign up for the 403 or the 401k, right? Sign up for the 401k. I was like, I can't run that fast, so I never signed up, right? I can't run that far. This is a dad joke, by the way, if you don't know. But
Yeah, it was funny.
yeah, thank you so much. So I was a professional musician at a church as a music director. So I was working like 5 to 8, or sorry, 8 to 5, doing that job. But then I was also in 1 month I played 31 touring Broadway shows in the same month as a music director on stage with full wig for it's called A Night with Janis Joplin. So I was working 8 to 5, and then I get off of work, and then I work that whole night doing Broadway shows. So 31 shows in 1 month. So I get home, you're like, where is this going? I realized, hey, wait a minute, like, yes, I'm making great music, like making great money, like I'll make like $8,000 playing this Broadway show. That's great. But I was getting home and my wife was already asleep when I got home, and I was like, that's not the life I want to live. Like and so I made my kind of metric of success professionally was I want a job and a career where I can eat dinner with my wife every day.
Yeah, no more of this. I'm working late because I'm a singer.
Exactly.
To make my daughter cringe. Okay, so you talked about the special moments and the special memories. Are there ones from that professional era of your life that you'll look back on fondly as it recedes into the memory?
Yeah, I made a little list before we talked today, so I have them all ready. So a really cool memory was I was a music director for an American Idol finalist. So back when American Idol was like a bigger deal, like especially like the first 5 seasons. So I was a music director. So again, we play shows. I arranged the music. We recorded records and stuff. So that was Will McCarr back in American Idol days. I think he lives in LA now doing, more professional music stuff. I was an arranger for Motown gospel. So, anytime I was the only white guy in the room, right? So I was, doing black gospel music, but I was only like the only white guy involved, really. But it was really cool. What I love about arranging is that it's kind of nice. Like if you're the type of person who kind of like doesn't like attention, being an arranger is awesome because you get to like kind of create the music in the background, and then everybody else gets all the credit. Which some people say like, Cody, like, don't you want the credit? I'm like, no, like I want to get paid and feel like I'm collaborating with others. Like I don't really care about having my name like on the billboard and stuff. So being a music director for American Idol finalists, like I was on stage performing, but I was also like background arranger for Motown Records, Universal Records. So some of the stuff that like sometimes I'll hear something on the radio and be like, oh, I helped with that, but nobody knows, which is great because I don't get a lot of questions about it. Others that are really fun, I performed with Broadway legend Ben Vereen. He's really known for Pippin and also Jesus Christ Superstar. So I actually performed Jesus Christ Superstar with him, at a big Broadway venue. I also I played with Steve Smith, the drummer from Journey. I was mentored by Hans Zimmer's orchestrator, Carl Ridland, who orchestrated Lion King, Interstellar, Dark Knight Rises, Inception, all those like great musical pieces. So
Yeah.
Another one I had it's dropping out of my head right now, but one of the Ricky Minor, who's the bass player, was the bass player for the Jay Leno show, and also the music director for Whitney Houston. He was one of my mentors too. So some of the memories aren't just what I did, but the types of people I was surrounded by, in that career. And the last ones, of course, were doing the big Broadway show with literally like full wig, like down to my, down my back, as part of Janis Joplin's band, right, quote unquote. And I thought of a really cool memory, which I don't think anybody can say they've done before, which is I played keyboard. I played in a wedding band at a Navy SEAL wedding at an undisclosed location.
You don't even know where it was, but you were there.
No, I know. Well, I knew how to get there, but it's just like
blindfolded
but I
you,
was like,
put you in the back of an Uber.
Yeah, what's really funny is like, when I'm playing that wedding, like of course, like at this point, it's all muscle memory. Like I'm not even thinking about the music. I'm just looking around and saying like, I'm at the safest wedding that's ever happened. Like literally, so the groom and every groomsman was a Navy SEAL, and when we went into the dressing room, they literally had their like Navy SEAL like, SEAL Team 6 like literally like written on there, SEAL Team 1, 2, 3 written on their changing bags. And I was like, this is the craziest thing. And that's of course when Navy SEALs became like such a huge thing right after the Bin Laden things. And so it was super cool to feel like, hey, like I'm not in the military, but like for that one night, I felt like I was part of the brotherhood a little bit.
We had a similar situation at our church where a community venue that people rent out for weddings. And I was walking through the parking lot thinking, oh, I guess there must be a wedding here or something. But the license plate were all Purple Heart, Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. And I thought, whoa, this is a safe place to be and in good company. So Yeah. Interesting.
So if you talk about, you mentioned, some of these recordings, if you're doing some professional recordings, that means there's some sort of residual check that's showing up, right?
No, well, it used to be that way. Not anymore. Now they just pay you for the work. It's kind of like hourly. Like they pay you for doing the job, and then it's the actual revenue shared between the producer and and the recording artist. So at this point, they got really smart in terms of future revenue by just saying, hey, like let's just keep money in house. And that's another reason. By the way, like if you look up like one of your favorite songs on the radio, it's probably written and produced by like 5 different people. Right. So sometimes ironically, especially in like rap music and pop music, there might be more people who worked on the record than words in the song. Right. There might be 5 words in the song and 6 people who wrote it, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it's very political and administratively. Yeah, like all the money's going to the producers, the executive producers, and of course the people on the record. But even playing in the studio on the record, a lot of those they're just paid. They're paid for the they're paid for the session, and then they'll never see a check again. So it's very difficult to be a full-time session musician unless you've already been in the game for decades. And by the way, you usually have to be living in L.A. or Nashville to really make that work.
You mentioned valuing, I don't want to say you value your anonymity, but not needing to have your name be part of that aspect. But within our professional advisory world, you are a public figure and you have a presence that seems that is that a contrast that I'm making too much of, or is that something that you've grown in and wanting to have your name out there as a thought leader?
There's 2 parts to this. There's the social proof of like the public like having a personal brand, the public like trusting and knowing and trusting you. So in the music world, it's all about who you know, right? Networking is everything. One of Ricky Minor, that mentor I talked about, he had a phrase which is nobody's going to call you if they don't have your number, right? So if you translate that into like the financial advisor world, there's a lot of like advisors who launch their own firm, and then they're just like waiting for somebody to like reach out. They're like waiting for that first client. I'm like, the client that's going to call you doesn't know you exist. So you have to do your work to show, first of all, you exist, but also have the social proof that you're trustworthy and you're actually knowledgeable about what you do. But the second part, this is a great transition from music to money, is that you talk about getting yourself out there, getting credit, right? I think transitioning from music to money, I wrote here, financial planning is like arranging music for an orchestra, right? So financial planning, the process of financial planning is very similar to how I would arrange music for an orchestra. What I mean by that is I'm not the composer, I'm the arranger, right? So I'm not the person who, creates the music. I'm the person who helps, really mold it into something more valuable. So, the client is the conductor. So everybody visualize like going to see the orchestra, right? The financial planner is not the conductor of the orchestra, right? The client is, right? I'm the arranger, not the conductor. So the client is conducting the orchestra. The instruments, right, are every area of their financial life. Like the insurance, the insurance are the strings, right? And the investments are the percussion, right? And tax planning is the like the French horn, right? The horn section, right? So it's really cool to start thinking, hey, like my job isn't to run the show. My job is to really provide personalized education to help them conduct their own financial lives successfully. So I just play a part, but if I got all the credit in terms of working with a client, if I get all the credit, if I'm the hero and not the guide, I think I'm actually doing my job incorrectly.
Yeah. Well, there's different metaphors that you hear people talk about the advisor. If they're borrowing from medical, they're the general practitioner referring to specialists, or they're the quarterback. But in the musical world, being the arranger, that makes sense.
The Yoda, not the Luke Skywalker, right?
Or that, yes.
You've read Story Branded.
I have it. Yeah, building a story brand.
Yeah.
Donald Miller. There you go.
Has there been any overlap as you transitioned from one world to the other, but also still doing music? Are there, have you been able to, because you were in a church, and that would be just all too easy to say, hey, I'm already plugged into a church. I'm going to be a financial advisor, and hey, here's my pool of clients. Is that, I'm hoping it wasn't as mercenary as that, but has there been overlap between the 2 worlds with clients enjoying the music or music people that have become clients?
Yeah, I've actually, only one client I've served was a professional musician, but it's never been in my marketing. I never created a niche of serving musicians. What I found, actually, somebody you should talk to in the future on your podcast, right? Spencer List, who is also a professional musician who transitioned to becoming a financial planner pretty much at the same time as me. But there's the idea of, again, you know how like you can't really help somebody unless they're ready to be helped.
Yeah.
Right. Like again, like you can shove all this stuff down their throat, but like they have to be willing to change. And I always say, they have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired before they're ready to make change. And most people come to us because there's like a presenting problem, or if maybe the problem isn't actually the problem, right? But they have to be willing. And I found that as working with musicians, even as a financial planner, I'd go play like a private event with other musicians who only worked in music. And what they would be doing is like they'd come up to me and they'd come up with their phone and say, hey, like here, like this is my bank account. What do I do? Right. Like, so it was cool that some people were actually willing to like get feedback, but I found that a lot of musicians, because there's such an independent mentality, it's kind of like a, kind of every man or woman for themselves sometimes in professional music, that I think that a lot of musicians are validators, not delegators. So they're really coming to you to say, hey, I did this thing, like, tell me I did a good, like please tell me I did a good job, rather than, hey, I'm having difficulty with this thing, could you please help me? So I find that at least in my experience helping musicians, sometimes they're very reluctant to ask for help because there's this, again, it's a stigma. It's a limited belief that musicians have that you have to do your career alone. That it's every person for themselves, and that asking for help is a weakness. So again, similar to mental health in general, right? There's a stigma. They literally call it the starving musician, right? And like Spencer List, he calls it the thriving musician, right? So we need to change. So I didn't find that it was my role in the industry to try to change that mentality or that framework, but I'm glad that there are other financial planners who do specifically serve musicians, so that I can I can play along, but I don't have to like niche down into just serving people I've played with in the past.
I'm guessing that would be an uphill climb because the financial services industry often its own worst enemy. And I'm guessing inside the talent creation world, that's doubly so because everybody knows somebody whose financial team did them wrong. And it's just, we've got a bad name in some parts of society more than others.
Right. Yeah. I think there's already a defense. I mean, in terms of money scripts, I think there's like a money vigilance, but also somewhat of a money avoidance money script that a lot of musicians have. Like, it's funny, like, so professional saxophonists, right? So a lot of us have heard about, who's the most, by the way, I'll ask you, who's the most famous saxophone player?
Kenny G.
Exactly. Most working professional musicians think Kenny G, they go, oh, he's a sellout. So effectively what they end up saying is like musicians who have kind of gotten successful to a certain degree, especially financially, are no longer real musicians anymore. Like they're corporate or they're sellouts. There's something, again, it's a limited belief that musicians have, which is like, you're only a musician if there has to be a struggle for you to call yourself an artist.
Once you've been in a Super Bowl commercial, you're no longer one of us.
Exactly. This is like, oh, you're with them now. Like again, like the singer is now one of the executive producer people. Like they're no longer a musician. So again, I don't believe that, but I think that happens professionally as well, where the same thing happened when I became a financial planner. Pretty much all of my professional musician friends, like I haven't heard from them since. So I lost like my entire, like I probably had 500 people on my phone, professional music wise, and I haven't heard from 2 out of 500 since I transitioned over.
Dang, well, that's distressing to hear. Yeah.
But it's just the way, again, it's kind of like this little club, like unspoken club of like, again, if you're a musician, but you're making money in different places, are you really a musician? That type of mentality.
What is the nature of your ongoing musical involvement? Are you a volunteer at the church, or what does it look like these days?
Yeah, so most of my involvement now is in the arranging world. So I have played on Sunday mornings, like if they need, a sub or anything. I decided not to go back into playing every Sunday, right? A big part of leaving, right, was so that I could spend more time with my wife and my family. So I like when I go to church, I want to be able to sit with my wife and actually, it's if you've ever, if you are a believer in any religious belief, there's a big difference between being in the congregation and being, in service in terms of playing music. It's very hard to have like a heart of worship when it's one thing when you're playing, but I find that I always find myself in a place of leadership. It's just naturally where again, if there's no clear leader, I become the leader, right? So
somebody impose order.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's no order. I will become the operator and the manager. So yeah, when I play music, I'm not just like playing along. Like I've never like played along or worshipped along, right? It's always been like I have in-ears and I have a microphone. Like I'm telling the musicians where we're going next in the form of the music. I'm saying, hey, another chorus or like or one, build the bridge or like, oh, build it up. We're about to move into we're changing keys, right? So I've always been in like an administrative role. It's very difficult to actually. So people say all the time, like, oh, you're a musician. That must be so fun. Like all you do all day is play music. That's so much fun. It's like they don't realize what's happening like in my ears and on stage. And like I'm moving my hands and listening and my feet are moving at the same time. Like there's a lot of administration that goes into playing music. That's not just like playing along or just listening like the people in the audience.
I mean, you should try being a bass player. You use 10% of your brain. You just follow instructions as they get shouted
just
into
use
your
two
head.
fingers, just go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's a production. I mean, you're on stage.
Absolutely.
It's literally a production, and that's a job.
And there are a lot of expectations of you, right? So if one person plays the wrong note, right, it goes from like oh, this band's awesome to everybody looks at you and says, what's wrong with him, right? So there's a lot of pressure to get things right, which actually goes into also as a financial planner. The name of my firm is Measure Twice, right? Like quality control is so important both in professional music and in financial planning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you had the chance to have kids yet, or is that not? Because I've got a daughter, and she's somewhat musical, but she's not in the band per se very regularly. Although she has played drums in the cage a couple of times, and that was a fun special memory for me, being able to play on the same team as Bree. But usually I'm at the tech desk, and she's sitting. I mean, I can see her across the room, but it's not like we're worshiping together. We just happen to be in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, and by the way, just a quick thing that came to mind that was really funny is, the only thing funny about COVID, right, a few years ago was that if you ever been to a church or like a live event where they have the drums mic'd and they have a little cage called caged in the drums.
Yep.
The big joke was that during COVID, like they didn't have to wear masks because they already had like the giant mask surrounding them, right? So they were already 6 feet away and had their mask. And but yeah, when you ask about kids, so my wife and I are actually in the middle of the adoption. So we are actually infant domestic adoption.
Okay.
We're at the place kind of standing in line, kind of figuratively. Like we're standing in line, like waiting to be matched with a birth mom. So
Okay.
yeah, we're excited to have kids within the like have quote unquote have kids. Have a kid in our house within the next maybe 9 months to 9 to 12 months or so.
Is your wife musical? Do you have the chance to play with her at all, or is she not afflicted with that blessing?
So if you asked her that, she'd be like, absolutely, I have no talent whatsoever. But she can sing in tune and she can clap on 2 and 4, which is like I'm like you're in the top 10%.
Harness that talent.
Exactly. Like if you can sing in tune, like sing louder than the other people next to you. Yeah.
Please. Yes. All right. Well, we talked about musicians generally getting started early. Have you far more musicians than, well, certainly than I do, probably than Brian as well. Have there been people that come to it late in life and discovered they came from a non-musical household but then picked it up? Or has the ship sailed by the time somebody leaves home?
Yeah, I think it's funny how, I mean, in terms of the brain developing, like, again, like if you've never played music and you're in your like 40s, 50s, and you're not going to get perfect pitch, right? You're not going to like reset your whole brain, like, everything in your brain musically.
Plasticity.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, yeah, there's just rewire all that stuff, like over the just listen to 30 minutes of music a day and rewire. Right?
Baby Einstein.
Music is I would say it's in the same realm as golf and chess, which are like these are things that you can learn late in life and you can do pretty much to the end, which I think is fantastic. And one thing I think about my grandpa, he had Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. He lived in a memory care facility, and it's amazing going to like an assisted living home or they always have a piano in the lobby. And it's amazing how somebody who doesn't know who they are, like they don't recognize their own family, but you sit them down as a piano and they can still play the songs from their childhood.
Instant connection to the past.
Yeah, or they listen to Elvis and they start dancing and singing along. I'm like that's incredible. So I think, so music is something that it's never too late to start and you'll never have to end because it's so again, music is like a language. So it's just like saying, hey, like, is it too late to learn language? No, right? It might take a long time, or you might have to use different approaches, like maybe use an app and also read a book and maybe go to the country and like immerse yourself in the language. Yeah, so music's similar. Like, hey, if you want to really learn music, like get a teacher, start listening to the music that you want to learn, right? Maybe go to some concerts, maybe talk to some other professional musicians to maybe get some little tips or share some of the resources. So yeah, it's an infinite game, right? As Simon Sinek would say.
My grandmother was a piano teacher, taught my mother. She went to school to do it, but she had a brother that never picked it up. And my grandmother went through enough pianos that like all of her grandkids have grandma's piano. I've got one. My cousin's got one. There's
That's
lots of
grandma's
pianos.
pianos, plural. Yeah.
But when she passed away, she was very old. It still had a keyboard in her home, and my uncle claimed it. Like, I'm going to learn. Everybody else in the family knows how to play. Like, John, you're 70 years old, but nope, it's not too late. I'm going to learn. Everybody else does it. I'm going to do it too. So
yeah, the
hopefully
one tip I'd add to that is if you do want to learn music, don't start by learning like what you're told to learn, like your scales, right, and your arpeggios, and your like start learning. Say, hey, what's my favorite song? Let's learn my favorite song. So that's actually a funny transition. Is back when my transition from like piano to keyboard too was I was really tired of just learning like what the teacher wanted me to learn, like all the classical stuff. I was like, I want to learn the music I'm hearing at school, like the other friend, like, so I learned all the Nintendo, like I learned how to play all the Mario music. Like I wish my keyboard was in front of me. I'd play like the underwater theme, like right. I would play like I learned the video games. I learned all the music on the radio. And by the way, what's really cool, whether you're 70 or 7, is when you play the music your friends are enjoy in front of them, you're automatically like by the way, if you want credit, there you go. Like just learn one song that everybody loves, right? And so like as a kid, I'd play the Mario song and like all the kids would surround me. Like you don't have to be a guitarist to be a rock star, right? In terms of being, in front of your friends. And you don't have to carry I always joke that the guitarist would always like bring their guitar everywhere they went to impress the girls. By the way, like you're not, the girls will not be impressed by you playing the keyboard, but maybe if you're married with kids, the perfect time to get piano because you're not going to have that competition.
the game is over.
Yeah, I think with guitar too, I tell people the same thing with guitar. It's like, oh, I want my kid to learn guitar. Like, do I need to get him like a classical guitar? It's like, no, get him an electric guitar and an amp and teach them 2 strings and just like get some Green Day or get whatever. Like
four chords make your whole career.
You have to, and with an electric, like first it's easier to play. There's not as much action on an electric guitar. It's a lot easier to press down, so you don't have physically you don't have to build up as fast as the calluses
right.
and
no bar chords.
The hand strength that you need for an acoustic guitar. But it's just keeping interest. It serves so well in learning an instrument. So to your point, like if you can just learn to play whatever you like, and because that will help in the determination. Then just
it'll keep you going. It'll keep you going. You won't burn out playing the music you like.
Right, right. Versus like Swan Lake or whatever, your teacher throws at you, the rose.
And I guess that goes to the advisory world as well, that if you find the stream of the business that you enjoy, if you love the tax code, then don't do as much, college planning or whatever, because you're going against the grain, that you find what works for you and lean into that, and it'll help sustain
like
a
choose
career.
your genre, right? It's going to say, hey, like, yeah, by the way, the best musicians in the world, like, aren't, like, the best jazz musician isn't the best metal drummer, right? Like they're, if they were, that would be pretty awesome.
Probably not.
But yeah, I love that. So we think about niche or niche, whatever you want to call it. If we talk about having a niche as a financial advisor, it's very similar to music, like choosing your genre. So yeah, just be intentional about choosing your genre of who and how you serve as a financial advisor. And not only will you be better at it because you enjoy it, but like you probably won't burn out because you're actually doing what's like naturally flowing through you.
Yeah. It took me a long while to figure out that I was, in fact, a bass player and was never going to be anything competent otherwise, but it worked. It flowed and seemed to get, acclaim girls for being a bass player. So going back to making that transition into doing this in college and professionally, what words of wisdom and words of warning would you give to yourself, knowing that you'd be keeping it for a lifetime, but one day not doing it as professionally as you were studying to do?
So going back and telling the musician self how to continue being a musician, or going back knowing that I was going to become a financial planner?
Yeah, either of those, both. What would be
I
helpful?
think that I think this is great advice for like newer aspiring financial advisors. Is that I think earlier on, both in music and in money, I would have been more intentional about who and how I want to serve. I think that in our industry, again, I think this is just more of an educational lesson for our industry. You talk about being a thought leader. Like, this is something that I'd love to be known for, which is a lot of times as financial advisors, we kind of start with, how do I get paid? Right? There's debates constantly about compensation models and all this nonsense. But the thing is, how you're paid is actually the third question you should be asking. It should be, who do I want to serve in as much detail as possible? Like, age, not just quantitative, but qualitative. Like, if you were to launch a financial advisory firm, in that first, the perfect client is the first client that walks through the door. Who are they?
Full-blown
Is it
avatar.
just them?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Your ideal client avatar. Like, is it just them? Is it them with somebody else? Is their kid with them? Are they scared about money? Are they excited about money? Like, so just carve out that avatar, right? So the first question is, who do you want to serve? The second is, how do you provide value to that person? How do you serve them? That also doesn't just go into which questions are you helping them like answer or solve, or problems to solve, but also, how do they prefer to be served? Like, do they want ongoing or hourly, or are they looking for somebody to just check in maybe once a year to make sure they're on track? Do they like 3-hour meetings or 30-minute meetings, right? Do they want to call you or text you, or do they want to keep it on, just email and video calls? So becoming intentional about who and how you serve actually will answer the third question, which is actually, what is the most appropriate way for the people I serve to pay for the service I provide?
Or at least rule out a lot of wrong answers. Yeah.
Right. And then, so, thinking about music, like, it would have been like very thoughtful for me as a musician to say, like who do I want to play music with and for, right? And then how will I provide value to the audience or to the, the director, right? So I think, musicians think the same way. They go, how am I going to make money? And they immediately go into the places where it's like maybe easy money or easier money, which is private events or maybe teaching, which there are amazing teachers, there are amazing players at private events, but some of those people are actually geared toward maybe doing something different or unique in a different genre, but they haven't been as intentional about who they're serving and how they're serving. So I think that's a really good kind of framework for any industry, especially as a financial advisor.
Well, and I'm, certainly biased as a musician, and as a career changer into financial planning a long time ago. But, I think it doesn't surprise me, especially as we talk to more and more people about their hobbies, where there's like a big creative piece of that hobby, that financial planning is kind of where we all ended up. Because, and I think as a musician, certainly as someone who went to college to study music and then changed in college and came out with a business degree, like, I think it's almost like, do musicians make really good financial planners because we have that healthy right brain of creativity, but we also have, there's that analytical piece. And if nothing else, if we ended up becoming financial planners, then just that alone tells us there's some analytical in us.
Right. Yeah. I also want to, funny thing about, being I feel like all the people who especially go into financial planning intentionally, you ask them like, hey, why do you want to become a financial planner? And typically they'll say like, I want to help people. But in more detail, I think what a musician wants to do and a financial planner wants to do is they want to help people feel better. They want to make people leave the room feeling better than how they came into the room. So as a professional musician, right? So whether it's worship or even a rock concert, right? Like, you want the people who show up to say, hey, like, for a moment, I'm going to like kind of put all the other things in my life, kind of set it aside, right? Like, all the daily stressors. Like, sometimes the client will come into the room, on a virtual Zoom call. They're wearing their scrubs because they just got home from work, right? So it's nice for them to kind of hey, you just came home from work, a stressful day, like, settle in, let's do some financial planning. And what I love is, I say at the end of this meeting, you will have more energy than you did at the beginning. So just like at a concert, you might have gone to a concert late at night and you're kind of already tired when you get there. But by the end of the concert, you're standing up and like saying, encore, I want more, right? I think financial planning can be similar, right? Is assuming that you allow people the space and you intentionally design your practice or, your role at your firm to say, how can I design a process that's going to help people feel better when they leave the office than when they came in? So I think that's a good place.
Some people have a hobby that has a very public-facing aspect to it. For professional music arranging, I'm guessing that you don't have a website that people can go and look at, or is there a way that if we said, hey, how do people learn more about Cody Garrett, professional music arranging hobbyist? Where do they go to find out more about you like that?
Yeah. So now at this point, there's actually just a quick funny story. So I have never paid for I've never technically paid for music equipment in my life.
Oh,
You're like, wait, how is that possible? So back in college, I was eating a bag of Tostitos. Random, right? I literally remember sitting on the bed eating a bag of Tostitos, like the big bag in college. You eat the whole bag yourself, right?
special
And
memories. Yeah.
right, I looked on the side and it said, "Hey, enter this code online for a chance to win tickets to the BCS National Championship football game, the college football championship." And I was like, "Sure, why not? I'm just sitting here waiting for my next class at college." So I typed in the code online, and within an hour, I got an email from Frito-Lay saying you won 2 tickets to the championship game. I sold those 2 tickets on eBay for $2,100.
Whoa.
With that money, again, my grandma was like she didn't believe it at first, but when I got the money, she's like, be very thoughtful about how you spend that money. I'm like, I'm buying a keyboard and an amp. So I bought a keyboard and an amplifier for $2,100 on eBay. And what's funny about it is just 5 years later, as a professional musician, I was fully sponsored by Kurzweil, the same keyboard company where I bought my first keyboard. So moving forward, like all of my gear and stuff was either like highly discounted or given to me. So it's kind of funny that I went into this realm of kind of, starting off with my first keyboard, and then later on I was sponsored. So one reason I say that is, maybe we can put in the show notes, is that the Kurzweil website still has my profile on their website where you can read more about my career, see a picture of me back 10 years ago.
Brand ambassador.
Yeah, and I also, by the way, there's actually a few videos on YouTube of me playing music. If you're interested in kind of saying, can Cody actually play? So there's like a little funny, like a little country piano solo on there. I actually recorded for my first year as being a financial planner, running my own firm. I actually recorded a Christmas piano medley, and then sent it to all the clients. So I actually ended up putting that on YouTube as well. So you can actually watch me playing my own arrangements of my favorite Christmas songs. So
Yes,
yeah,
please.
if you want to check out my music background, there's a little bit of evidence. I'm also on some records, but we don't have to go down the rabbit hole there.
Okay. And you are many places out there professionally. Where do people go to find out more about the work that you're doing in the professional space?
Sure. So financial planning, I have 3 businesses under Measure Twice brand. Measure Twice Financial is my RIA, my firm. I'm not accepting new clients, so I don't really send people to that website anymore. It just sends people to other advisors freely. The second is Measure Twice Planners. It's an educational platform and community for financial advisors who really want to go deeper into financial planning and also expand their professional network. And also it provides CFP, and experience hours, 50 hours per month of experience for new planners. And also we have like the 30 plus hours of CE for CFP. So that's an annual membership. So I guess as a financial advisor, the best place to go is measuretwiceplanners.com to learn more there. And then lastly, Measure Twice Money. I actually teach consumers, non-advisors, how to create their own financial plan as a family. I give them my entire process to do it themselves. And all of my financial planning client meetings are actually on YouTube now for the public to watch, with full transparency about what we do as financial planners.
Sure. Wow. That's a lot of good ways to find more of Cody. So, and we appreciate your time here this afternoon talking to us about the work that you've done. Anything more from you, Brian?
No, this is great. I'm guilty here of any time that I know a little bit about, or a lot of it. In this case, I tend to sit back, so I didn't ask a lot of questions because I love this topic, and I had a front row seat to a podcast that I love very much. So apologies that I didn't ask a lot of questions, but no, thank you very much for coming on. This is really, really interesting, and love talking to other fellow musicians any chance we get. So thanks for coming on, Cody.
We'll have a whole nother discussion about music offline so you can get all your questions out.
All right. Thanks a lot, Cody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors is brought to you by Fiduciary CFO, forward-thinking tax and planning solutions for business owners, like RIA firms and their business owner clientele. The opinions of Brian, Joshua, and their guests are for entertainment purposes and should not be construed as legal, tax, financial, or investment advice. You should know better than to take any of this content seriously. Thanks for being a fan of the show. If you were listening and thought to yourself, hey, I know somebody they need to have on the show, you can do something about that. Go to unexpectedhobbies.com/nominate and tell us who they are and what they do that's so interesting and unexpected. If we agree, we'll send them an invitation and we'll hope they say yes. Now it's unexpectedhobbies.com/nominate.